the current opposition was trying to focus around the NEET-related issues of the students, and while the ruling party was trying to focus around the discussion on the president's speech. We are not witnessing the kind of change which was expected in the parliament, particularly within the parliamentary behavior. Let's see how things unfold in future, because we are having yet another 5 years of Modi government. At least one doesn't know what will happen after that. But broadly, I will explain the whole phenomena within the framework of what we know as a kind of critical analysis of how parliamentary democracy has worked over the period of time. We all know that parliamentary system of democracy, which we broadly imbibed from the Westminster model of the Britain, where political executive is formed out of the parliament, that is the legislature, which in India has two bodies, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, House of the Parliament and the State Council of States. And this kind of executive, this kind of the form of government has its inherent weaknesses. As we know that in a plurality system and the single MP constituency systems, the party or the alliance which acquires the majority, it runs the risk of having the kind of majoritarian outlook. This is how the things are based on the simple majority system. And that's why if the norms are not followed, and if all the institutional checks and balances start weakening, then there is always a possibility that this parliamentary system, working within the liberal democratic framework, may shift towards some kind of, autocratic or some kind of totalitarian traits. We have been witnessing, particularly since 2014, we are witnessing that various institutions that we will discuss how electoral system, in spite of having the electoral system, various institutions of democracy conceived and visualized within the Indian constitution are gradually weakening. When I'm talking about the various institutions of democracy, I'm referring electoral system is just, representational system is just a part of it. There are several other value systems working as an institution within the constitution. That is the whole institution of human rights, the whole system of separation of powers, the whole system of judicial system ensuring the social justice. And there is also a kind of independent media working outside the parliamentary democratic framework, and the party system as a whole. This is very important, because how a ruling party considers and treats the opposition parties, who are also the part of the democratic system, this also strengthens or weakens the democracy in any liberal society. If we go by the Western liberal norms, we witness that there is at least a semblance of regard for the opposition political party. And opposition as an institution is very much relevant in those societies. What we are witnessing in India is the successive, decline of the institution. But before that, we should take a brief, a kind of glimpse of how elections, these 18th Lok Sabha elections were held. If we go by certain facts, just to give a kind of idea about how things worked out in this Lok Sabha election, elections which were spread over nearly 44 days, and on 4th of June, results were announced. BJP secured on its own only 240 seats. That was not a majority, but it was a minority government. But since it had a kind of pre-poll alliance with the JDU and TDP, it was able to secure 293 seats, which is the majority, because the 272 is the threshold for forming the government. That is the halfway. So how do we understand this 2024 verdict? We should come to this point, and what do we get out of that mandate? What this mandate said? Because ultimately, It's true that we are continuously witnessing, even during the previous tenures also, NDA government did not regard the mandate. The question of correspondence between the voters' mindset, or what we know as the public opinion or Janmat, whether that gets translated into legislation or not, whether that gets translated into parliamentary deliberations and decisions or not, it all depends on whether public opinion and electoral democracy is being taken seriously by the ruling party or not. What we are witnessing since last uh, at least 10 years, that there is a scant regard for the popular mandate. We all know that this time people gave a kind of, they didn't give a clear-cut majority to the BJP as such and their agenda. In fact, we can say that uh, in particularly in those states on which were considered to be the center stage of the Hindutva politics. Hindutva, as we know, I'm not referring to Hinduism. There is a fundamental difference between Hinduism as a way of life or as a kind of cultural or religio-cultural tradition, and Hindutva as a kind of political ideology enunciated by the Savarkar, and the way it is practiced by the Hindutva group of institutions, I mean, broadly RSS, BJP, Vishwa Hindu Parishad, and range of, I mean, at least hundreds of ancillary organizations which they adhere to the idea of Hindutva, which ultimately has the notion of Hindu Rashtra as their ideal goal. This is quite, we can have a discussion further that how Hindutva, whether it is a legally valid or not, or it is a constitutional idea or not. We all know that Hindu Rashtra or any kind of theocratic state is very much antithetical or opposed to the secular democratic idea of the Indian constitution. But what we witnessed in these 18th Lok Sabha elections, that in Uttar Pradesh, if we take one of the leading states where the entire, it was said to be the laboratory of the Hindutva, because starting from Gujarat, Pradhan Mantri Modi came to Uttar Pradesh, and this time we witnessed that even his margin in Varanasi, it got down. So it's not that there was a kind of clear-cut mandate to, or rather support to, the BJP in Uttar Pradesh. BJP in Uttar Pradesh stood second in terms of political gains. The Samajwadi Party emerged as the leading political party, having largest number of seats. So this is very important. What message we get from 18th Lok Sabha election? We also witnessed that a political force which was raised by the Kanshi Ram, the Bahujan Dalit force, Bahujan Samaj Party, it could not get even a single seat in Uttar Pradesh. That shows it had certain political compulsions, and this also showed that if you do not sense the mood of the people, if you do not become representational of the popular aspirations in electoral domain, ultimately people, in spite of having kind of caste affiliations or certain kind of ethnic caste identity building, people may reject you. Bahujan Samaj Party case in Uttar Pradesh is a typical case of rejection of the people from the very community, which was a very hardcore support base. Of course, some part of the support is still intact with the BSP, but in terms of electoral gains and political power, Bahujan Samaj Party could not perform better. So this one has to understand, but we will just look into the vote percentage. And these facts are very important from the electoral point of view or from the point of view of understanding Indian politics. BSP, we all know that number of seats is there with everybody. BJP got 240 seats, Indian National Congress got 99 seats, Samajwadi Party 37 seats in Uttar Pradesh, because Samajwadi Party is largely focused around in Uttar Pradesh. TMC got 29, DMK emerged as the victorious political party. It got 22 seats, TDP 16, JDU 12, Shiv Sena, Shinde group. We saw Maharashtra was a peculiar case where BJP was trying to bank upon winning larger number of seats from Maharashtra. But this time we witnessed that Maharashtra gave a kind of surprising result where kind of bastion of Hindutva politics and Maratha identity and all the whole narrative, because Savarkar also belonged to the Maharashtra and the whole Hindutva narrative. Even Shiv Sena also relies much on the Hindutva politics because they talk about the same thing. So Shiv Sena, Sena Shinde faction, they got just 7 seats. And Lok Janshakti Party in Andhra Pradesh, it got 5 seats. Similarly, we find RJD could not perform this time better. It got just 4 seats. And CPM got Communist Party of India Marxist. Their seat per seats as well as the vote percentage declined this time. It was just 4 seats. In Kerala, interestingly, the vote share of the CPM has gone down and Congress has gained there. IUML got 3 seats. Indian Union Muslim League, Aam Aadmi Party, of course, was another loser in this election. It got just 3 seats, and their vote share in Punjab as well as in Delhi substantially declined. JMM, Jharkhand Mukti Morcha, got 3 seats. Of course, it could not meet the expectations in Jharkhand, in spite of having the tribal leader being arrested. It's at least a good news today that Soren has been released by the High Court. And it is a good news, particularly for the regional aspirations and regional political parties. CPI ML, Liberation, which is a political force in Bihar and Jharkhand and some parts of India, they also secured 2 seats from Bihar. Again, another result-oriented analysis or some readings we can make out from this parliamentary election this time, Lok Sabha election. If we go by the vote share, what we witness that the India Alliance share, if we look into how people responded, India Alliance share rose by 7%, roughly by 7%, 6.99%. It got 41.3% of the total votes cast, 41.3. And NDA Alliance put together, it got 46.2%, which was slightly 0.2% less compared to the 2019 elections. And others secured 12.5% of the vote share. That is minus means compared to the last 2019 election. They secured minus 6.79%. And again, we go by the region wise. If we divide India into east, north, south, and west, India Alliance, this is a quite significant denominator, that India Alliance in East, it secured a very substantial change by increasing their vote share in eastern parts, that is West Bengal and northeastern states, as well as the Bihar and those eastern states, which is geographically east in India. Their vote share rose by, it remained at 42.6%, but it increased by 17%. This 17% increase in the eastern part of India. And India Alliance in northern part, it witnessed, northern means Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan, Himachal Pradesh, these states, you witness a significant shift. That is, they gained by 43%. Their plus, 43% plus means compared to the last elections, and their vote share was 44.97%. Uttar Pradesh constituted a large chunk of this vote share, 44.97%, and this vote share is even higher than the BJP's vote share. That will read further. In southern states, India Alliance secured 44.33%, which was plus 11%, and in western India, that is Maharashtra and other western Indian states, you have 39.27%, and that is 29% increase in their vote share. And this vote share is very much reflected in the increase in the number of seats of the India Alliance, including the Congress being the leading political party. Now we come to the NDA. NDA means BJP and their partners. In eastern states, and this also shows the pattern of inclination of the people or the mandate, how they have sided or agreed or disagreed to. In eastern states, we witness minus 6% of share. Minus means it has decreased, and their vote share stood at 43.99%. In North India, there was a substantial decrease, that is minus 37%. NDA alliance, I mean, that is particularly BJP being the leading political party in Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, and these states. So we witnessed decline of vote share by 37%, and their total vote share was 42.5%. In South, it is very interesting this time that particularly in Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, and these states, BJP vote share has increased, and this increase is substantial if we go by the history. It is plus 16% compared to the last elections. And the NDA alliance secured 36.82% of votes in southern states. I think most of you are having a kind of idea about how this is how pattern of voting of different states in favor or against the NDA and India alliance. We can roughly say that body politic today is divided along these twin formations. That is, on the one hand, we are having India alliance, on the other hand, we have NDA. So this a kind of bipolarity, emerging bipolarity we can see here, in spite of having regional alliances and all. At a national level, we are witnessing this kind of bipolarity in terms of formations, political formations. And again, in South, we talked about, and in Western India, NDA alliance, that is Maharashtra, and then you go by the all Western states, we have 53% of vote share of the NDA, and there we are having again minus 30 compared to last elections. The change has been minus 30. So this was largely a pattern showing how different regions of Indian states have responded differently to the political issues and concerns during the 18th Lok Sabha elections. And again, I'm coming to the next fact. Usually one talks about, we are talking about the representative democracy because representation is one of the core concerns of the parliamentary democracy. It is unfortunate that since last, at least particularly since post-liberalization, the representation aspect has taken a backseat. We all know that, the representation, when we talk about the representation is a much broader concept, theoretically as well as practically, historically. One is the substantive representation and one is the procedural representation. Means, for example, we are having constitutional guarantee in terms of reservations for the SCs and STs that ensures the presence of SCs and STs in the parliament. So this is important. What we are witnessing, that their presence must be having, and we all know that their presence, of course, must make some change to the lives of the people belonging to the SCs and STs. But unfortunately, this is only a procedural aspect of it. The substantive idea of representation means that their physical or denominational presence is not important. How much their concerns, they raise the concerns and issues belonging to the community they belong to. For example, if you are an SC and if some legislation is being made dismantling or rather weakening the rights of the Dalits, and if you are not speaking there, you are not raising your voice by virtue of being a part of some kind of majoritarian agenda or some Brahmanical party of the Brahmanical dominance, and you are remaining silent, then how a Dalit community can say that you are being representative of our community? So, of course, that's why this idea of sectional representation comes in. Suppose regional aspirations, class aspirations, identity aspirations, gender aspirations are not represented in the parliament, then one can say that parliamentary democracy is weakening and its representative character is being eroded. Look into some glaring facts. Muslims constitute nearly 15% of the population of India. I'm talking about the minorities. And if you look into the representative character of the Indian parliament after this 18th Lok Sabha elections, they are having just 4.4%. This is historically abysmal after 1962, which has the lowest Muslim population in 62. This is second time we are having this much of lowest population. That time the concern was not centered around the community, because this community debate was no longer relevant in 1962, and identities, formations, and political formations focused on the issues which are not identity centric. But now, at a time when the whole communal narrative, Hindu Muslim narrative, identity narrative, caste narratives are under play, and even at this point of time, we are witnessing that the very representative character of the Indian Parliament is being compromised because the 15% of the Indian population that is Muslim minorities. They are having just 4.4%. That is only 24 MPs, 24 member of parliaments in Lok Sabha. Again, a glaring non-representative character of Indian Parliament is in terms of the Muslims. What we witness, that women constitute nearly 48 to 49% of the Indian population. That is half, less than half, due to gender issues and due to the patriarchal nature of our society. Women, only 74 women parliamentarians are there in the parliament, 18th parliament, and this constitutes 14% of the total parliamentarians. 14%. 48% of the Indian population having only 14% of representatives in the parliament. Again, there is another aspect, that is the class aspect. Most of the parliamentarians, because ultimately it matters in our lives, that which class do you belong to. If I belong to a rich class having part of the elite, obviously my primary concern would be to look into my class interests. And I'll be, if I'm declaring that I'm a crorepati or arabpati, I'm multimillionaire, then one can't, a tribal or a Dalit community or a villager can't expect me to represent their voices. So this is very important, because here comes the whole idea of the substantive democracy, whether how much representational character is that. One data was published by the CSDS Lokniti team. Not CSDS, this was about ADR, Association of Democratic Reforms, ADR. They published that in this parliament, in 18th parliament, we are having 5 out of 543, we are having 504 crorepatis. Crorepati, 1 crore is not a big deal. But many of them, even majority of these crorepatis, they are multimillionaires. They are arabpatis, in fact. This shows the class character of our representatives. And many of them are belonging to the scheduled castes as well as from the scheduled tribes. So that the aspect which I was referring to, that mere belonging to a particular ascriptive identity is not sufficient for you being the representative of that class. Here comes the very important aspect of what we know as the class in itself and class for itself. Because as an electoral bloc, you may constitute a class, but your representative may not belong to your class, and your representative may belong to an elite class or the class of ruling classes. So this is so much about the very representative aspect of the 18th Lok Sabha and our parliament. And if we go by the issues, concerns which were raised during this 18th Lok Sabha elections, we all know that it was no different from last 2 elections, because since 2014, the very nature of BJP's politics, NDA politics, had started unfolding. And we had also started witnessing unfolding of their agenda of Hinduization of the body polity. One thing we must not forget, that the forces which were unleashed by neoliberalization, particularly by Manmohan Singh regime in 1991, globalization, liberalization, and privatization. There we witnessed that India's as well as the global finance capital, which had very strong stakes, and particularly after 2007 and 8, with the American slowdown, there was a lot of pressure on the global financial capital. And we all know that India's corporate elites, India's top 1%, they are the part of the whole globalized finance capital. It is one, just by virtue of Ambani or Adani being an Indian, one should not consider them not to be a part of the global financial capital. They are having global stakes, the global shareholders, and they are the global players. So the finance capital had lots of stake in times of particularly downsliding of what we know as the American meltdown, particularly after 2007 or 8 American slowdown. The focus was on the developing nations and particularly India. China had already insulated and started decoupling itself from the US economy. And now we know what China is doing and where China stands today. What was the predicament of India, that the global finance capital, as well as the Indian big capital, monopoly capital we know as, they banged on certain processes. You see, neoliberal regimes are fundamentally different from the earlier regimes. It is no longer a free market economy, as it was talked during the times of, talked under the neoliberalism, or talked under the what we know as post-liberalization kind of thing. What we see today, that the finance capital now knows that the demand from different markets are getting down. And if demands are getting down, to increase their what we know as accumulation, capital accumulation, the fortunes of capital accumulation, they started banking more on states, more on state as a facilitator to their accumulative process, accumulation of the surplus capital. And they knew that by traditional mechanisms of the market, they cannot make much money. So they started relying on usurping, or rather what we know as whatever public money or public sector or natural resources, quote unquote, what was there a part of the public under the control of the Nehruvian state, they banked much on taking over all those resources. What we have witnessed, particularly since 1991, and more particularly since this process was accelerated by Narendra Modi regime, that state became not just a facilitator for the free market economy, but rather a transferer of resources. So we all witnessed that pre 2014, there was a kind of consensus with the Indian corporate capital to sponsor the Narendra Modi, who himself portrayed as a kind of biggest facilitator by his Gujarat model, that I will damn care about the popular mandate, and by my Hindutva agenda, which has much mobilizational and which has much what we know as deviating character, I have the capacity to manipulate the public mind and to keep what we traditionally know as the politics of divide and rule. We will provide a kind of framework where, and not just a framework for divide and rule, but rather we will provide a kind of platform where public assets would be transferred in large number. And that is the reason I usually tell in most of my discussions that if you go by the net worth of Adani in 2014, this was hardly around 20 billion or 25 billion. Today, if we go by direct and all other different kinds of mechanisms of his investments and the capital assets, it is more than nearly ranging between the 90 to 100 billion. Within 10 years, this is the entire story of capital accumulation. And this is being facilitated by what? This is being facilitated by our representative political party in power, that is NDA. I'm saying it openly because government people don't like to listen to this, but this is a glaring fact. And this fact became too obvious that one of the leading opposition party, that is Congress, during the Bharat Jodo Yatra, Rahul Gandhi started targeting on the two of the Ambani, Adani and all that. This is how. So this is how monopoly capital has benefited most, not from the free market mechanisms. Here, not if this was the case, then we could not have witnessed now transfer of resources, railways, airports. You see, this aspect were realized by the farmers of India. We all know that 3 farm legislations which were brought during the Modi regime. And that's why we must have witnessed during these Lok Sabha elections, particularly in Punjab, particularly in Western UP, in spite of wooing the Jat community of the Western Uttar Pradesh by giving Bharat Ratna to Chaudhry Charan Singh, they could not get much of the support from the Western UP or Haryana. Haryana, you must have seen that Congress has gained much in Haryana and BJP has come to the halfway. So these are the areas inhabited by the farming community. And farming community this time has voted substantially against the BJP. This is my perception and the reality, because we keep on visiting to those areas, talking to the farmers and all. So this is a fact. So this was realized, and they had a kind of year-long struggle against these farm laws, and which were subsequently withdrawn. But their demand for the minimum support price still remains, and corporate India, particularly to monopolists, 2 or 3 or maybe 10, 20, they are eyeing on the bread and butter of the Indian people, farming community, because Adani and Ambani both have come into the food market, and they are eyeing on. They would never like to ensure minimum support price, which will subsequently impact their fortunes in long run. So this is how the whole story unfolds, and I'm talking about the corporate sponsoring. Earlier, people used to say that it is a kind of corporate sponsoring of political class. But what we are witnessing gradually, that there is a kind of merger of the polity and economy, not economy that say per se, but merger of the political class and economic class. Mr. Jeans, kindly mute yourself. Okay. So what we saw, that it is a kind of corporate-led state, Indian state today, where it appeared during last 10 years also we witnessed, we must be aware about several kinds of legislations. If you look into the tribal rights, what has happened? It has been weakened regarding the mines, mining the old tribal populations. Hasdev forests in Chhattisgarh, you must have seen the worst scenario there. All that land which was inhabited by the tribal community, it has been given to the Adani, and they have cut down lakhs of trees there, because it is assumed that lots of mines and minerals are there. Same is the case in Jharkhand. I know since 1980s, we are part of the one movement, Azadi Bachao Andolan, run by, and there are several activists there also. So we know that kind of loot of the natural resources, which traditionally under those laws, they belong to the communities, and there was a provision that the village community consent has to be taken, but now that provision has been diluted. Similarly, regarding the farmers' land rights also, it has been diluted. If you take any of these people's rights, it appears as if Parliament has become a kind of institution where, instead of empowering the people, now you are witnessing a Parliament. It appears as if it is in a kind of constant struggle with its own people. They are always. Recently, you witness several dilutions in terms of the press freedom laws. I'm talking about the civil liberties. There also, there is a substantial dilution of the civil liberty, particularly press freedom. New Information Technology Act, which is under operation. You saw that in terms of the press freedom index, India stands among the lowest, even undeveloped countries. Similarly, several other indicators. VDAM, you must have learned about the democracy report, World Democracy Report, where India stands much even lower than the Bangladesh I think Pakistan also. So this is a very sad state of the whole scenario. Just by having a kind of electoral democracy and 5 yearly elections, we cannot say that India's democracy is vibrant and it is flourishing. What we know as, I still remember that after independence, starting from Rajni Kothari to Rajni Pamdat to many other, even Marxists and socialists and secular theoreticians, they talked about the democratization of India. Atul Kohli, they talked about the deepening of the democracy. But now we are in a phase where we are in a phase of crisis of democracy. And we have crossed that phase of crisis of democracy, but rather we are entering into a kind of neoliberal phase where these institutions of democracy, including constitution, it faces substantial danger. If that was not the case, then probably during elections we would not have witnessed most of the opposition parties talking about saving the constitution. Because one major concern was that people were wary about their reservations, their rights being trampled if Hindutva group or rather NDA gets a kind of brute majority. So this mandate this time, 2018 elections, it is against the kind of programs and policies, anti-people programs and policies, which people perceived that their lives are not getting better. We can talk sectorally, we can talk class-wise, we can talk reason-wise, we can talk gender-wise, and we can clearly, evidently establish that the majority of the Indian population has not benefited. And this is very much evident from the kind of inequalities which now the world is talking about. The World Inequality Lab, you must have gone through. There is a Thomas Piketty, a political scientist, an economist. He talks about the rising inequality in India. And he says that nearly just 1% of the Indian population, it has a command over the 50% of the nation's wealth. And this is very glaring. I mean, we are not probably, we are the most unequal in terms of economy, the most unequal societies of the world. And this has happened more particularly in 1980s. 50% of the, I was going through one data, in 1980s, 50% of the national resources, the whole GDP was with the 12% of the population. 12%, and now it is with 1%. Oxfam has also done research. This Piketty has also come up with data, and several other institutions are also talking about that. If you go by the RBI data, consumption data released every year, we find how, so what government is doing, instead of improving the conditions of the people, it is engaged in data fudging. It is just lowering the benchmarks. Recently, RBI governor or some Niti Aayog chairman said that we need to revisit the poverty data and all that. This is very unfortunate. This is a kind of political dishonesty and dishonesty with the people of the country. So these are some of the, but the unfortunate part is that the government is, completely not ready to accept the popular mandate. Since first day, since fourth evening, Prime Minister Modi ji, when he was making a speech at his party office, he said that people have given a thumping majority and all that. There is no introspection within the political class to look into how people are behaving. Because why is it happening so? Because they have, with the help of the corporate power and with the kind of control they have established over different institutions of the state apparatus, they are confident that the majority of the masses don't matter now. And even parliamentary democracy, parliament, we all have seen that how irrelevant gradually, starting from today. No discussion was allowed on the NEET because lakhs of people, particularly from the middle classes, these NEET aspirants are not lower classes or working classes people, because that much of fee and all that can't be afforded by the working class people. So, but even in spite of being a middle class issue, and even it was not discussed. And government says that today I was going through one statement by Kiran Rijiju. He said that Congress is raising an irrelevant issue, which is not worthy of parliamentary discussion. So what kind of things are worthy of parliamentary discussion? Farm right. We all know NEP, as we are working under all over India, new education policy, completely being insensitive to the infrastructure, insensitive to the kind of circumstances which prevail in the rural India. It was implemented. And now we are witnessing that due to this, the dropout ratio has substantially increased. I'm telling you from my experience in my institution, where from first semester to second semester to third semester, because the input cost of the students, the payment cost, it has gone much up, and the students are finding it hard to manage due to because their economic conditions are not improving. So these are some of the concerns which we must address when we talk about the parliamentary democracy. Elections 2018, 2024 elections, the 18th Lok Sabha, we hope and we aspire that opposition must matter, because ultimately a parliament is not a place for deliberation, not a place for people's voices being raised in the parliament. Then what is it meant for? The track record we have to go through very meticulously. We have to be very cautious about it. We all know that at no point in history people's rights or people's economic statuses are improved or ameliorated just by normal modes. People have to struggle for it, and in parliament also opposition parties will have to struggle for these things, because these are not normal times. India's parliamentary democracy is, and not just we in India, but many of the global level political scientists also finding some major threats to Indian parliamentary democracy. And some of the threats is that first of the threat is the crisis to the secular democracy. The very idea of the secularism is under compromise, because here is a political force which is attempting to transform India into a kind of theocratic state. They have still not distanced themselves from the very idea of the Hindu Rashtra. The second most important, even the most important compared to the first one, is the merger of the corporate capital with the state. The corporate, what we know as the finance capital takeover of the Indian government. This is very dangerous. We all know that. You must have heard about lateral entry in bureaucracy. I still remember, I can cite so many instances where officially it has been stated that their priority, the government's priority, is to facilitate the corporate capital, the corporates. And this is very much evident from the kind of waivers which has been given. Lakhs of crore of loans given to the corporates have been waived off, while farming community or any other community, if they ask for the waivers, government completely rejects them. So this kind of merger of the corporate class with the political class is bound to, and this has happened in past, that it is bound to generate authoritarian trends in India's parliamentary democracy. In fact, it is the negation of the India's parliamentary democracy. And third important danger is to the very idea of the constitution itself. I'm talking about coming in future 5 or 10 years. There is a substantial threat to the India's constitutional values of what we know as the justice, social justice, liberties, civil liberties, women rights, gender rights, and rights of different states. Because ultimately there is a crisis to this centralizing tendency of one nation, everything, one nation, one election, one language. This kind of idea of the oneness, it is a kind of authoritarian centralizing idea. And this is bound to generate reactions among different sections and different fragments of Indian democracy. So India being a kind of unity in diversity, there should be a kind of collusion. There should be a kind of, and a liberal democracy and constitutional democracy was a mode for bringing diverse interests together. But what we are witnessing today is just opposite to it. And apart from that, another serious danger to India's democracy is the rising inequality. Because democracy is also a kind of, it's not just a political system, it's a kind of economic system also. if it doesn't have that kind of economic base, if there is so much of inequality, starting from Plato times, Aristotle also said that revolutions occur because of inequality. It was not only Marx who said that economic inequality generates instability and revolutions. Long back, Aristotle had said it, and we have historically it is evidenced. So Indian democracy and the people of India have to be aware that these dangers of crisis to secularism, crisis to Indian democracy, crisis in terms of inequality, crisis in terms of civil liberties, and crisis of institutions, particularly institutions of justice, particularly judiciary, legislature, and executive, because the separation of power was conceived precisely to secure the whole democratic structure. If all the powers merge together, and there is a kind of initiative. Just before elections, we witnessed that election commission, which was to be election commissioners were to be appointed by the consultation with the Supreme Court. This government came up with a legislation saying that Supreme Court would no longer be consulted, because consultation with the Supreme Court meant that it will be some sort of impartiality, and political class, political party in power on their own self themselves, they won't be able to nominate somebody loyal to their agenda. But they succeeded in it. It's very unfortunate to say that the current chief election commissioner and the body is very much embedded in this kind of non-neutral idea. So these are the dangers to the institution of federalism. I'm just saying that parliamentary democracy per se and elections per se are no guarantee to safeguarding the democracy, to safeguarding the parliamentary democracy. And we all have to be cautious. Political parties have to be cautious, and we have to be aware at whatever plane we can do for it. We have to write, we have to struggle, and political parties have to be aware about it. Only by a constant awareness of different stakeholders of Indian democracy, we can safeguard India's political democracy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for such a valuable information and knowledge. Now it's time for some discussion round, and if anybody wants to be a part of this suggestion, can please come forward, or if anyone can ask any queries also, they can also come forward.
Good evening, sir. So my question is,
Yeah.
which uh, which aspects of Indian democracy has been most affected by the Lok Sabha
I'm
election
not,
this time?
you are not audible. Your voice is not clear.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Am I audible?
Now you are audible.
So my question is, which aspect of Indian democracy has been most affected by the Lok Sabha election this time?
Affected as in, I mean, you were talking about which aspect of Indian democracy has been affected. One thing I can, if you, I can say that the kind of what we know as authoritarianization, the authoritarian trends were increasing. Public this time, voters this time have put a check on it. This election at least was an election in direction of democratizing the body polity, which was gradually turning authoritarian. So this aspect will be mostly affected, because now you witness a substantial number of representatives also in parliament who will be speaking against the government policies if they are against the people of India. Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Good evening, sir. I'm Monica Mathur, semester 1 from JKM College. I have a question. Jan Seva Party contested election for the first time in Telangana.
Right.
What is the reason? Is why it won the seat on which is contested election?
You see, there are regional equations. One thing is that probably the Jan Seva Party chief is a political actor. He is a cinema actor also. He's a cinema actor, and they have a kind of popularity among the people and the kind of issues, and moreover, the more these political parties, the local leadership of the BJP as well as the Congress, they were not in condition to largely to become the voice of the people, and that particular political party raised certain region specific issues, because this also marked the absence in Telangana particularly. This marked that was a kind of anti-incumbency factor against the ruling party there, and people aligned. They found that, and it's true that there was a kind of understanding. It's not that you must have seen that there was a kind of implicit understanding between the Jan Seva Party and the other political parties. It may not have been in terms of what we know as the pre-electoral alliance, but some kind of understanding, behind the scene understanding was there, which also may have helped the Jan Sena Party to win their seats. But most important is that there was an anti-incumbency factor. The leaders of this political party are cinema actors who have a kind of presence in people's minds. People are, fans of these leaders that way. And there was a kind of lack of these oppositional forces, particularly BJP, Congress, and other political parties. And this was the factor, what I understand. But I would go into the very phenomena of one political party, jumping into the fray and winning that kind of popular support. That needs to be understood a bit more. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. One more question.
Yeah, carry on. Is there yeah. Is there someone else?
Sir, I have one question.
Right.
Sir, my name is Abhishek Mato.
Yeah.
Sir, in a scenario where elections have already taken place and a government with authoritarian tendencies has come to power, what
Right.
non-electoral strategies and civil society initiatives can citizens employ to counterbalance the concentration of power, protect democratic institutions, and promote human rights and the rule of law, considering the limitations of conventional power channels?
Right. This is this significant question today. You see, the process of democratization occurs at several levels. We can't expect formal institutional levels of democracy under the constitution to be the arbiter or protector of the democracy only. We can't bank on the formal channels only, because ultimately democratization has not to be a kind of only in the realm of institutions. It has to be a part of the political process as a whole, and the social processes also, and that's very important, because what we are witnessing continuously, that there is a kind of interplay between the authoritarian framework which is being evolved in Indian polity, because ultimately what we witness, that significantly there is a kind of restricting trend. Most of the people's movement are characterized as today what we are witnessing. If you talk against the mining giants, the monopolies, they would brand you as Naxals. You must have seen that recently Arundhati Roy, who recently got an award from London also recently, just after her being declared as a kind of nominee in UAPA case, because UAPA case has been allowed by the Lieutenant Governor of Delhi. So this is the danger, that how to work for the democracy while being a part of the civil society. You see, there are no fixed routes. Ultimately, the first thing is to have a correct understanding of the situation. correct understanding of the class interests different kinds of institutions are performing. This is the primary requirement of every individual, every intelligentsia, or every person in the society who wishes to transform India into a kind of democratic society and a just place for living. So you have to identify, and your alliances and your opposition has to be on the basis of merit. You can't have a kind of blanket. At a moment, you can see that certain caste identity force can work as a kind of democratizing force, but on the other hand, you can see that it has certain regressive roles also. So there are no ready-made formulas for it. Ultimately, what we know as the democratic practice, some people call it a kind of revolutionary practice. Revolution not in terms of overthrowing the institutions, revolution in terms of transforming the fundamental architectonic of the power relations. If you are working for that, then ultimately you have to identify the real contradictions working in the society. And if you are having a correct understanding of the contradictions, and if you are working with the people, among the people, then people will align with you, and that subsequently will transform at several levels. This will reflect in your understanding, your rising of the public consciousness, different social organizations, and again, also in the political realm also, in terms of electoral politics also. Such forces will be reflected in electoral politics also, because ultimately, you can't say that grassrootism has its own limitations. Grassrootism, by being a grassroots political activist, you can affect the substrata or a kind of subalter, but the superstrata, which is being controlled by the giants, it will remain unaffected. So it has to be a kind of mass movement, and this mass movement, building mass movement is very important. Sometimes objective conditions allow this, sometimes subjective interventions do play an important role, and unfortunately, academia, which was supposed to be a part of this transformational agenda, we all have kept ourselves aloof and away from this transformational role. Okay. Am I
Okay, thank you, sir.
answering your question partially?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, and sir, one more question. Like the means news channels, media are said to be the fourth pillar, but nowadays all are, I think, under one control of one government only. So, what would be the role of youth and the media channels? How it could be channeled so that everyone get to know the real thing, what's happening?
That's true. Not governmental control. Nowadays, it is under the corporate control. Nobody watches the government channels, I think. Very few people.
Yes, yes, yes,
Right.
corporate.
It is under the corporate control, and it is the agenda is being set by the corporates in collusion with the ruling party at the center. So that's the scenario, and that's why media, the media is also a class media. How can you say that? Because the ownership pattern very much matters. Ownership decides the interests. So how can you expect Adani's channels or Ambani channels to raise the issues of the tribals? Because the dispossessor can't talk about the dispossessed, because ultimately on his entire industry, his entire fortunes bank on the disposition. So how can we think about the mainstream media, which is because they have been assigned the task of narrative building in favor of the corporations. Ultimately, what has happened in recent times, you must have seen the typical NDTV case is a typical example where Ravish Kumar and many others, they were thrown out, and of course, they were not thrown out legally, but such conditions were created where they had no space in that channel. Similarly, several other individuals, we know many other people in media who are out of the system of the mainstream media, and now they are working with some kind of popular, what we know as the social media, different social media channels, YouTube, WhatsApp, and all these things are working. But again, there are limitations to these channels also, because these channels are also being moderated and provided by the multimillionaires. Facebook and whole Meta is running the Facebook as well as WhatsApp. they are the arbiter of your content. We are all aware about it now. Now it is a public thing that whatever you write on WhatsApp or there, its reach and access is being monitored and is being controlled. If you write a kind of anti-government, post, its reach will be reduced. And if you are talking about certain kind of thing, because we all know that kind of big game is happening everywhere. So what is important is that a best example was the Kisan Andolan. You must have seen that farmers in movement, and this is a typical case where movements also create their own channels of communication. They had, during whole 1 year of movement was there, and all the farmers of Punjab as well as Haryana and Western Uttar Pradesh, they had a very effective mode of communication. Of course, it was also based on social media and other channels, but they had certain media groups. I know that they had set up separate media groups which were working to disseminate the knowledge or information in those in their support base. So it was, since it was a part of the movement. So I think there can't be a single strategy. There has to be a multi-pronged strategy where you have to understand the significance of the mainstream media also. You have to counter it there. You can't say that I won't go to the mainstream media. No, you have to engage there also. Because if you are sure about your moral locations, if you are sure about your political locations and righteousness of your political location, then you should defend it even in the mainstream media also. You can't say that I won't go there because they'll be targeting me and they'll be just rejecting my viewpoints. Let them reject. But because, and another dimension which we have to think about, particularly regarding a media scenario, because in media there is a sender and there is a receiver. This was about the sender side. I mean the signaling side. Another aspect is the receiver. Here is the people. What should be done? That there should be greater and greater media literacy. More and more people should be taught to filter out any information they are receiving. We should not receive any information unchecked or even unverified. So this kind of literacy, this is the task of the teaching community as well as different social movements, to tell the people that do not trust these media, this kind of whatever is being pumped from this industry, and you please verify it and please recheck it. So I think what we know as the media literacy, beyond this normal literacy and knowledge, is also a very important factor. And this is what I think. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir, for an insightful, comprehensive answer. Thank you, sir.
You are not audible.
Thank you, sir, for your insightful, comprehensive answer. Your guidance on promoting secularism and democratic values in India is invaluable. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Welcome. Anyone else?
Good
Good evening, sir.
Yes.
Okay.
So my name is Rimal Biswas and I am the student of JKM College. Sir, I have one question. In what ways do election results highlight the representation of various socio-economic groups in the Indian Parliament?
I think I referred to this question in the beginning itself. I talked about the representation of the minorities, the Dalits and scheduled tribes. They are being represented by the reservation system, because that can't be tweaked by any political party. The amount of reservation, 27% and all, it's being provided by the parliament and under the constitutional scheme. Of course, there are discussions around how to dilute the whole reservation in jobs as well as in the parliament. But given the kind of strength and political force it has taken, nobody can think of diluting the reservation for SCs and STs today. But so far as other communities are concerned, they are, and within that representation also, I talked about how the class character of representation has changed. I mean, almost 93%, 94% of the population they are from the rich people, 93%. 504 parliamentarians have declared in their affidavit that they are crorpatis, and half of them are multimillionaires. They have thousands of crores. So how this issue I discussed in the beginning itself, that this representational character of the parliament needs to be worked out, and ultimately there can't be a panacea, or there can't be a kind of ready-made solution for it. Ultimately, people have to be aware that their organic representatives should reach to the parliament. Otherwise, money power, and this is being ensured by ultimately, just during this election, you saw this electoral bond issue, how Supreme Court forced them to come up with, and then we came to know about the alliance between the corporate capital and the political party. Largest benefactor of the electoral bond was the BJP and NDA alliance. So these factors we have to be aware about, because ultimately this is very significant. And I talked about the women. Women are just represented 14%, and population is 48 to 49%, and only 14% women are there. How can we think about any radical legislation on the issue of the women? Because we have seen the patriarchal attitude of these Hindutva forces as well as the forces which are there in the parliament. So it's to be deliberated by the people of India, right?
Yeah, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Any other questions?
Good evening,
Yes,
sir. Sir, my name is Atya Parveen. My question is, how shall coalition government impacted the functioning of the Lok Sabha?
Will you repeat the question?
Yes, sir. How shall coalition government impacted the functioning of the Lok Sabha?
Coalition government depends on how weak or strong coalition is there. This time we are witnessing, but we normally political scientists, they express their apprehensions that it will be a kind of unstable. But what we are witnessing, the way TDP and JDU, they surrendered on the issue of the speaker or deputy speaker, we can't expect much change, because by and large their policy framework is the same, and we can't expect much change there. So coalitions, of course, do impact the functioning of the parliament, but much will depend on the sensitivity of the ruling party. Because ultimately, if you are having a majority and you are having a comfortable majority where you are seeing no danger from your supporters or allies, then let the opposition shout in the parliament. I won't listen to them. This is what we have witnessed in last 10 years at least. So it all depends on the kind of political culture which has emerged in Indian politics. Coalitions do matter, but it should not be a coalition only in terms of coming together of diverse group, but it should be a coalition of interests, coalition of issues and interests, and that is lacking. Those parties which are supporting NDA, none of these political parties have shown that kind of spine, that their guts to express any diverse opinion on any of the political issue. Forget about the fundamental issues. They have not even talked about their regional concerns. So what is the meaning of that kind of coalition? Ultimately, it turns out to be a kind of one party rule. So it's very unfortunate, but coalition works only when you have the spirit of coalition and you have coalition centric issues and concerns. I don't see that this coalition, one doesn't know what will happen, because given the kind of money power current government muscles, it has the capacity to engage in horse trading. The moment, why there was a serious crisis, the moment you decide to withdraw the support, they have that much of amount to buy most of them. There will be defection. This is what happened in Maharashtra, what you witnessed. So it's a difficult ball game altogether. Yes.
Thank you, sir. Sir, one more question.
Yeah, I'm listening.
Sir, yes, sir. What is the reason for women taking less part in politics in India?
Is it so? Women are taking, but women are not contesting elections. They are politically aware, and traditional factors like patriarchy is there. Their economic status is compromised in family as well as in society, in job structure. So I think these are the factors, and gradually, in recent years, the conservative politics, the whole identity politics and conservative politics, when politics is centered around Hinduness, so women. One has to understand the status of women in that particular identity. If you go by the whole Hindutva framework of politics, there women are supposed to remain within the household. They are not supposed to be in the public and occupy the public spaces. If you go by the traditional Manusmriti and all that, women are portrayed very negative, and they have to be subordinate to the male and the patriarch in the family. So that ideology also works because largely either women are seen as instrumental because just to ride the political ladder, or they are seen as an object of political power. Their substantive representation is never seen in the positive light by the society or by the family or by the patriarchal males. So these are some of the reasons why women are not participating, and more particularly, you see, any representation or any community doesn't need to bank on the mercy of the patriarchs or the political parties. If they are not self-aware about their rights and their participation in the political system, then nobody can help. They have to come up, they have to equip themselves politically, socially, economically, and then the political representation will rise. Because you cannot just accuse others for being not merciful towards you. You have to rise up and you have to raise your voice. Yes.
Thank you so much, sir.
Any other
Good
question?
evening, sir. Good
Okay.
evening, sir. I am Sonali Bhagat of JKM College. My question is, we have seen that K. Annamalai lost the Lok Sabha seat this time, who was previously an IPS officer, and on the other hand, we see Amritpal Singh, a Khalistani leader, won while being in the prison. Is the victory of democracy or threat to Indian security?
You see, it's true when you don't have substantive issues in politics, and if you are, I'm just asking I'm just asking you a question, everybody to a question. How a person, many of the BJP leaders, those who talked about this phenomena, that give us majority, we will change the constitution. You must have heard about it. Many of the political leaders of the BJP said that we give us a kind of 400 power plus 400 so that we can bring about changes in the constitution. How is it a kind of national idea? What is the idea of the nation? Is it not an unconstitutional idea that we will change the constitution if you give us the majority of 400? What change the constitution means? What? We will turn India into a Hindu Rashtra. Is it a constitutional idea? Is Hindu Rashtra a constitutional idea? Then how come, I'm not apologist of any kind of theological state, how Khalistan and Hindu Rashtra are not to be villainized, both of them? I consider both ideas at par. A person talking about Khalistan and a person talking about Hindu Rashtra, both are the same. So in this sense, I'm just arguing that if you take the whole debate into the identity framework, it is bound to generate such forces, such vociferous forces, which will talk about the disintegration of India. Hindutva is equally a kind of disintegrating idea as is Khalistan or any kind of theocratic state. So this is an important realization which Indians have to realize, that only a secular democratic India can put India together. Otherwise, there will be different kinds of religious notions of nations and nationhood and statehood. So I think, of course, not just Amarinder Pal Singh or Amrit Pal Singh, or not just any bureaucrat not winning, but even that is equally dangerous. And this idea of Hindu Rashtra is equally dangerous. And it is both are the two sides of the same coin. Okay.
Good
Good
evening,
evening,
sir.
sir.
Yes. Yes.
Sir, I have
Good
one
evening,
more
sir.
question.
Yes.
Leader who forms the first alliance after result chooses his party and moves to another party for that public support. Sir, what your point of view?
Point of view on what?
सर इट मीन्स कि मतलब जैसे कोई बीजेपी में है तो उसको
ठीक
देख
है।
के हम लोग वोट देते हैं, या फिर कांग्रेस में है, लेकिन जैसे ही रिजल्ट आता है तो पार्टी चेंज कर लेते हैं, जिसके कारण से जो पब्लिक है उसके ऊपर मतलब वो लोग जो चूज करते हैं कि वो बीजेपी में है या फिर कांग्रेस में, उस बेसिस पे उसको वोट देते हैं। दैट्स ऑल।
डिफिक्शन की बात कर रही हैं आप, कि आप कैसे एक पार्टी का व्यक्ति दूसरी पार्टी में चला जाता है।
हाँ, यस सर।
जी जी जी। तो ये देखिए, जब भी चुनाव अराजनीतिक या नॉन आइडियोलॉजिकल ग्राउंड्स पर लड़े जाएंगे, जब भी अपॉर्चुनिज्म पर लड़े जाते हैं, ज्यादातर ये राजनीति के जिसको कहते हैं अविचारधारात्मक होने का एक नतीजा है। नॉन आइडियोलॉजिकल, जब वास्तविक मुद्दों और विचारधारात्मक मुद्दों पर राजनीति केंद्रित नहीं होगी, तो इसमें आयाराम गयाराम जैसी प्रवृत्ति आती है। इस पॉलिटिकल फिनोमेना के बारे में आप लोग हिंदुस्तान की राजनीति के बारे में जानेंगे तो आयाराम गयाराम की फिनोमेना बहुत प्रसिद्ध है। तो ये एक बड़ी वजह है, क्योंकि भारतीय राजनीति का जो अराजनीतिकीकरण, वास्तव में ये अराजनीतिकीकरण नहीं होता है, वस्तुतः ये यथास्थितिवाद के प्रति होता है, और उसमें अपॉर्चुनिस्ट ट्रेंड्स पैदा हो जाते हैं। क्योंकि ये इस बात का भी इंडिकेटर है कि ज्यादातर ऐसे लोग राजनीति में आ रहे हैं जिनका कोई वास्तविक सरोकार उन समाजों से नहीं होता, उन लोगों से नहीं होता, उन पार्टियों से नहीं होता जिसको वो रिप्रेजेंट करने की बात करते हैं। वो केवल पैसा दे करके, मैंने तो आपको एक उदाहरण दिया कि कैसे करोड़पति लोग आ रहे हैं। क्या ये किसी जनसेवा के भाव से 504 लोग आए हैं? करोड़पति अरबपति व्यक्ति क्या जनसेवा के भाव से संसद में जा रहा है? कदापि नहीं। वो केवल और केवल अपने फॉर्च्यून्स और एक कैरियर बनाने के लिए वहां जा रहा है। इसलिए एक अवसरवादिता का रिफ्लेक्शन है, और ये हिंदुस्तान के लोकतंत्र के साथ एक बहुत बड़ा छलावा है, धोखा है। तो इसको उसी रूप में देखें, इसमें कोई बहुत ज्यादा वर्च्यू नहीं है, कोई सद्गुण नहीं है। एंड दिस इज अ मार्क ऑफ अपॉर्चुनिज्म, दिस इज अ मार्क ऑफ डाउन स्लाइडिंग ऑफ द डेमोक्रेसी इन इंडिया।
थैंक यू सर। एंड वन मोर क्वेश्चन सर, लाइक इंडिया का जो अलायंस है, जब भी वो लोग हार जाती है, ठीक है, तो फिर वो लोग ईवीएम के ऊपर मतलब ब्लेम करते हैं कि ईवीएम में छेड़खानी हुआ। अगर ईवीएम के थ्रू वोट नहीं होता तो हम लोग जीत जाते। क्या सर सच में क्या ईवीएम के साथ छेड़खानी होता है?
You see, you must have seen recently Elon Musk, who is the techno giant of the entire world, you can say. He made the statement that everything can be hacked, and nobody understands technology better than him, because his organization has produced technological marvels in terms of manless cars and all those things. He knows more about remote sensing and remote controls and all that. Similarly, different people have talked about. I'm not neither affirming nor discarding the idea that EVMs can't be hacked. This is quite important. I'm taking this position because I have been part of the electoral process as sector magistrate in this area, in my constituency. So it is important to ensure, I would say, that if many of the world democracies, including USA, UK, and many world democracies, if they have shifted towards most of them, not many, but most of the electoral democracies have shifted towards the postal ballot, then India, to ensure the credibility of the electoral process, because without credibility of the electoral process, democracy is nothing. Representative democracy is nothing. So if we want to ensure the credibility, we should turn towards the postal ballot, and that is the best solution. We should ensure that safety and security should be ensured. The way Can we say that safety and security of the EVMs are completely foolproof? No, I can't say that. Manipulations do happen. Several writ petitions are filed in the Supreme Court regarding where have EVMs gone, why this data fuzzing has happened. So not many questions are there. But my opinion is that we should follow the democratic electoral practices from the Western countries, particularly the best practices. There is nothing wrong in taking the best practices, and if they have shifted towards the postal ballot, we can also shift towards that. That's it.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
We have already taken 1.5 hours. And any more questions? I think we should limit the questions. Any more questions? Hello?
Any more questions?
Good evening, sir. I have a question.
Yes.
Yes, ask.
Yeah. Sir, in a country like India, where majority of population is uneducated and illiterate, where they don't understand what is the meaning of a democracy and what is their fundamental rights. So how do we expect them to go through and understand this complex issue so they can understand what is the NDA government doing across these 10 years?
Okay. Are you done with your question?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You see, your question is that there is a kind of, gap between the politics and the people. This gap is there. We have to acknowledge it. Only by acknowledging the gap, that most of the majority of the people, and a clear evidence of this kind of gap is that people are easily manipulated on the lines of caste or community. If they would have been literate, if they would have been self-aware, then probably they would not have opted for that kind of identitarian or narrow politics or narrow bases of supporting these political parties. So this is a fact that there is a gap between the politics and the public opinion or public, and this needs to be improvised. This needs to be worked upon. We can't remain silent and let further. And remember, this is my understanding, that usually we have a linear idea of progress, assuming that societies always progress towards betterment. That's not the case. We have seen Afghanistan and many of the West Asian countries where there is a concept in political science known as political decay. And we are witnessing now we don't need to understand political decay from West Asia. We can understand this phenomena from the Western world. The Europe and America, they are the downsliding democracies. The home of the democracy, the mothers of the democracy. What is happening in UK? What is happening in France? What is happening in Italy? All neo-fascists are taking over these societies. So they are literate. That's the case because the sharp polarizations are taking place. There, the entire case is different. In their case, their choice for their majority or rather a substantial chunk of population opting towards the right wing or neo-fascists or authoritarian policy, their concern is based on different apprehensions. In India, right-wing shift is also because of the lack of knowledge of the majority of the people, because people here are not what we know as self-conscious political entity. So that consciousness level has to be worked upon so that people are more aware about the true intentions of their representatives and their representative political parties. That's it.
All right, sir. But at the same time, there are a number of population who are they have nothing to do with the democracy. They just live a life and they just don't care about anything.
No. It's a wrong understanding. Everybody, every entity, every tree. I'm saying that every living organism, if it is surviving in a society, in a natural world, their predicament, their status. What was the fault of the Hasdev forests? They were brutally cut. Lakhs of acres of land was completely made barren. And you will say that every entity, everything is within the country is influenced by the policy decisions. Just by assuming that by life is, they buy something, They are taxed directly or indirectly. They pay if there is inflation, if there is scarce availability of resources. Ultimately, these things are being affected or decided by the policy decisions of the government. So how can anybody say that they are not affected by the politics, or they are, not influenced by the politics? Politics pervades everywhere, every part of it, except few personal domains. Like, even there also, feminists should argue that even personal domain is also influenced and decided by the politics. So it's not that politics is not affecting common man's lives. It is affecting even if you want or not.
Yes, that's true, sir. I agree with you.
Anyone
Okay,
else?
yeah, okay, that's fine. And I think that's the last question. And Sashikant, I don't have a question, but there is a curiosity on my part that thank you very much for your timing and all. And I think you spent more than 1.5 hours. And my curiosity part is that I've been looking at Prime Minister Modi over the last decade itself. And what I feel is that there is a sort of metamorphosis taking place in his identity, in his personality. He is changing like a chameleon like Reed at any time. For example, look at the way how he chants Rama mantra, and from one context, and subsequently he shift to taking the constitution into his head. So how you look at this phenomenon? Is it an opportunist politician, or is he deteriorating in his values, or he is becoming a more hypocrite?
You see, most I can understand. Anybody having studied Adorno, Horkheimer, or even for that matter Ashish Nandi, who had discussed about Narendra Modi's authoritarian personalities when he was the chief minister in Gujarat. We all know that most of the authoritarian leaders, for them, each and every mannerism has a transactional value. And they use institutions only as instruments for political power. You must have seen, it was very curious and very interesting for me. He was lost in Ajodhya, the center of whole Hindutva mobilization, Ram Mandir and all that. The entire nation was put into stake. But the moment he saw that from the entire Ajodhya belt, not just in Ajodhya seat, from that entire region, BJP was routed, completely, rejected by the people. So, and he got support from the what you know as Odisha. So from his speech, you must remember, from Jai Shri Ram, he shifted to Jai Jagannath. Understand? So for these people, for these political opportunists, slogans, leaders, gods have significance only till the time they are helping them to, ride to the power ladders. So they are just political opportunists. You can't read much into it. How a person who declared himself to be a kind of messenger on the earth by the God himself, and Avtara and non-biological kind of thing. You see, they have brought the level of politics to such a low. The best part is that people in India, after 75, 80 years, they understand, at least a major chunk of people are understanding their tantrums, and they see the emptiness of their political slogan. And this election was precisely the rejection of their emptiness. It's a purely opportunist and instrumental use of religion. They are totally Machiavellian in nature. Machiavelli said that you use religion for the purpose of. So they are completely, and this way they are secular. You see, this is very interesting. This I still remember Sudipto Kaviraj. You must have read it. He said that the politics of communalism is a secular politics. So it was very interesting hypothesis. So I examined it. So his argument was that communalism is practiced not for the theocratic purpose. Here, communalism is being practiced for the purposes of political power. Hence, it is acquiring a secular character. So this is very important, that use of religion, use of deities, gods, temples, mannerisms, all these things are meant for political power. And this is what Machiavelli said. You do not yourself surrender to the theocracy or some kind of religious idea, but rather use religion and theocracy for your purposes. And that's why it is secularism.
That's it.
I mean, this one may have
Yeah.
disagreements, but broadly speaking, we can see that for him, religion and any kind of this kind of mannerism is purely for political power.
That's it. Yes, Monisha.
Now we are moving towards the end of the session. I would like to call Rimil Biswas, student teacher of B.Ed semester 3, for giving vote of thanks. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Manisha. The power of the vote is the power to change the course of nation. Good evening, everyone. It's my privilege to propose a vote of thanks in front of you all. Myself, Rimil Biswas, student teacher of B.Ed semester 3rd. We have been fortunate to listen to an engaging and insightful session in this webinar on the topic Lok Sabha election result and Indian democracy by our distinguished resource person, ASSO Professor Dr. Shashikant Pandey sir. Your detailed analysis and profound insight into the electoral system and democratic principle have enlightened us all. We are truly grateful for the time and effort you have dedicated to sharing your expertise with us. I would like to extend my sincere gratitude thanks to our Principal Director, Dr. R. Shikanta Nair sir. Your visionary leadership and unwavering support have been instrumental in making this webinar a reality. We all are grateful for the opportunities you create for us to engage in such meaningful dialogue. My sincere gratitude also goes to our Secretary Sir, Mr. Narayan Prasad. Your presence and words always motivate us to aim higher. A special thanks to our HOD ma'am, Dr. Moshami Mahato. Your guidance, continuous support, and motivation have been instrumental in making this event grand success. I would like to express my deep appreciation to our program coordinator, Assistant Professor Sushma Archana ma'am. Your hard work and dedication behind the scene have been vital to its success. And now I wish to thank the professor, lecturers, and students from other colleges and all the community people who joined us today. Your active participation and enthusiasm had added great value to our discussion and learning experience. I also extend my sincere thanks to the faculty members of JKM and JKBEd College. Your cooperation and involvement have been significantly contributed to the smooth execution of this program. I wish to express my sincere thanks to the alumni of JKM College, Ms. Vinita Bhakat. Your continued support and active participation in college events are greatly appreciated. And especially thanks also goes to our dedicated volunteers, anchor, and technical team. Your efforts in organizing and coordinating this webinar have been exemplary. Without your hard work behind the scene, this event would not have been possible. Thank you so much. And lastly, I extend my sincere appreciation to all the participants for this engagement and thoughtful question, which added great value to this session. And thank you once again for your participation and making this event memorable. Thank you so much and have a great night.
Okay, Sajika,
Okay.
thank you.
Bye bye. Thank you very
bye-bye.
much.
Yeah, thank you.
है ना अरे बहुत हौच-पौच हो गया था स्टार्टिंग में ना बंद हो गया था फिर और हम इधर एंकरिंग करके हम इधर डर गए जा आपको देख के और मेरा हस्बैंड पता है अभिषेक जो क्वेश्चन पूछ रहा था ना वो मेरा हस्बैंड पूछने वाला था पूछ लिया ये बहुत ज्यादा हो रहा था ना
स्टॉप स्ट्रीमिंग मतलब स्टॉप रिकॉर्डिंग हो जाएगा ना, दोनों हो जाएगा ना वो।